Yes, I know it's easy to talk about the Brooklyn Nets, but I really don't care because 1, I haven't talked about them yet on this channel, and 2, did anybody just realize the type of offseason they had? It was remarkable. They were able to reload and strengthen the roster around the big three of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. On paper, they bolstered their defense, they made a couple of interesting draft picks, and more importantly, the big three will be healthy and whole coming into the season. Maybe it's because the Nets don't have the polarizing coverage that the Miami Heat teams with LeBron James had, or what the Golden State Warriors had when Kevin Durant was on that team. But for a team that should be the heavy favorite to win it all, I feel like their offseason went under the radar. Well, about as under the radar as a title favorite could actually get. But anyway, I want to go over the very clever and smart offseason that went on in Brooklyn. I thought the Nets did a pretty good job of retaining most of the important players that ended up being in the playoff rotation. Jeff Green was a notable loss, but Brooklyn did retain Blake Griffin, who ended up starting for them and being a solid contributor after giving us the old okie doke in Detroit. They also kept Bruce Brown, who basically plays the role of a two-way center as a 6'5" guard. Both of them provided lineup versatility and optionality for head coach Steve Nash, and retaining those players allows the Nets to keep those options open at a base level. I also thought trading away Landry Shamet and getting the 29th pick, which ended up being Day'Ron Sharpe and Javon Carter from the Phoenix Suns, was smart maneuvering by general manager Sean Marks. Shamet was going to be a restricted free agent next summer anyway, and they traded him to get Carter, who isn't a restricted free agent until the following summer in 2023. Carter had some inconsistent playing time in Phoenix, but more so when the team became good and the guard and wing depth was suddenly better, but I think Carter has an outside chance to carve a role on this team. Carter is a bulldog on the defensive end, and while his volume of attempts are low, he shot 37 and 42.5% from 3 the last 2 seasons. If that shot is for real, the Nets' high-octane talent can help Carter succeed in a refined and hyper-condensed role, sort of like Bruce Brown. It's the new free agent acquisitions that should have people deathly afraid of the Nets this year, more so than the theoretical healthy version people visualized last year. The Patty Mills signing came out of nowhere, and the Nets ended up signing one of the better scoring bench guards that was on the market. Mills has been one of the better shooters in the NBA, and the Nets get someone who could shoot off movement, off the dribble, among other methods. Mills essentially replaces the shooting that was lost with trading away Shamet, but Mills also provides more attacking off the dribble as well as playmaking off the bounce. You know, someone who can really diversify the offense across multiple lineups. James Johnson is someone who can play multiple positions and provides a toughness and an edge defensively that the Nets just didn't have on the perimeter for a lot of the regular season. Johnson can play some point forward, and he can also play make in a way Jeff Green couldn't, although Green is clearly the better three-point shooter of the two. If you're looking for another candidate for a Bruce Brown clone, then DeAndre Bembry might be the one. He has been a role player favorite among the hardcore NBA fans. He can provide cutting, passing, straight line drives to the rim, and tough-nosed, hard-playing perimeter defense. Bembry is just not as good of a career three-point shooter as Bruce Brown, which honestly, the shooting gap between those two really isn't that big anyway. The Nets had the 18th ranked defensive rating last season per Cleaning the Glass, and honestly, there were some points where it shouldn't have even been ranked that high. But by the playoffs, the Nets defense got better, and Kevin Durant started playing more small ball center. Now that the big three is healthy heading into this season, Durant could see more time at the 5, and the defense should improve off that alone. On top of that, adding guys like Bembry and Johnson, and even Javon Carter via trade, should help boost that defense as well, considering what was coming off the bench in terms of perimeter defenders last year. With the Nets' immense talent, they have the type of environment that could be conducive to making sure that late first-round picks can develop and be successful NBA players. Getting Cameron Thomas and Day'Ron Sharpe with the 27th and 29th picks respectively in this past draft seem to indicate that's just what Brooklyn is hoping for. Thomas is someone who is the quintessential throwback bucket getter, a player with the whole bag of tricks to score primarily from the mid-range, can shoot the 3, and draws fouls. He was not considered a good defender coming out of college, or at least he didn't commit to it at LSU. This sounds familiar. but if he can earn his minutes on a contender by giving effort on that end, we could see Thomas in a bench scoring role that could be amplified playing next to the star players and the utility role players. I mean, he certainly won't need to take time growing into a role that involves scoring, and while he does that, his game can mature in other areas under the watch of the Nets coaching staff over the years. Day'Ron Sharpe will most likely be the one out of these two rookies to ride the pine for a lot of the season, considering who is in front of him in terms of bigs on the roster. Sharpe is a 6'11 big who played his ass off as a freshman at North Carolina, but seems to have upside on that end of the floor as well. You could see why the Nets made the pick. It's a great upside pick to try that late in the round in order to fill the center spot over the next few years. If one of these two rookies ends up popping even a little bit, that just adds to the embarrassment of riches in Brooklyn. I'm leaning towards Cameron Thomas being the likely one to get the playing time first because he has a skill set that has a better pathway to minutes. Again, it sounds insane to say that the Nets had an underrated offseason, but I feel like that's what happened. Everyone rightfully talked about Giannis and the world champion Milwaukee Bucks, Team USA's impending and then not impending demise in the Olympics, Damian Lillard, and the Lakers getting Russell Westbrook. And I think that's part of the reason why the Nets signings were just a blip on the offseason radar. But dude, if you look at these signings, coupled with Durant and Kyrie being healthy, and James Harden most likely not showing up to a training camp this time around as hefty Harden, it's hard not to say that the Nets should be the undisputed title favorites heading into the 2021-22 NBA season.